Well, we'll keep trying. I guess we can't count him as president until we.
Looks like he's trying to
That's great. That's great.
Chief, are you there?
He may be able to hear us.
About these things, I'm gonna put them in the, they should probably have it starting
Or
on.
text them or otherwise. Wait, discussion on the task force formation.
I'll start. It's probably not gonna be real comfortable. I was amenable to the idea, but it's come to my attention that a group using the title of this committee has already met with no public notice, no public information to be had. Transparency is in the title of this committee.
There's been no official formation of anything at all. There's people that got together and discussed it and came up with the idea of bringing it forward. So,
And furthermore, it's on record that the intended purpose of this committee is something other than what's been reported to us at corruption, anti-corruption.
that's mentioned as one of the, if they find evidence of something to hand it off, but that's not the intended purpose.
I think the inception of this committee is corrupt. I'm very worried. I mean,
People want to volunteer to help us do things better.
and meeting under the auspice of this committee without public notice.
The mayor can appoint ad hoc committees.
I understand that.
That would go forever without any notice.
Of course, I totally respect anybody's ability to get advisement from experts or whatever. But that group met under the title of this committee. Transparency is in the title. It kills me. I'm not gonna put my name anywhere near this. And I did not feel that way earlier.
Well, with background, meeting in somebody's backyard to discuss the possibility of forming an official committee is nothing nefarious about that with volunteers that are public people talking about public data. There is nothing that was done under the table or in secret at all. And it was decided, hey, let's put this forward.
Well, and I guess I was seeking the same information. And it was my understanding that in lieu of the ad hoc committee, that we would form a council committee.
Correct.
And then I guess that meeting date was post that.
No,
I don't know.
This
I don't know
This
that.
was before the council meeting. This was, way before the council meeting. We met in someone's backyard and discussed it. Before it was decided to bring it to council, nothing has transpired since then. There was a group of volunteers sitting around talking about how to best approach this. And it was suggested we bring it to council, so we did.
So it's not smell of transparency.
Well, that's why it was brought forward to be done in this way.
Mayor Pro Tem, sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, do you feel any better that council members would each get to appoint someone?
I don't. What I would be amenable to if we're going to continue to look backwards and there's really an idea that there's been some nefarious activity, maybe we need to look at a forensic audit. I'd be amenable to an RFQ for a forensic audit. It's going to cost us money. It can cost us money. It's not cheap. I know that.
Have qualified volunteers that would be subject to council approval or fully capable and competent to do that and have a desire to do so. Because they live
I'm
here.
only one person.
I live here, it's their money. They want to look into it.
Mr. Mayor, may I add?
Yes.
All right. So I think the issues with the bank account security that we had. That alone is enough for me to at least take pause and notice that there's some procedural issues possibly that we dealt with. Maybe they're all cleaned up now. In my eyes, I'm not necessarily worried about looking towards the past. Once again, my opinion, like you said, one man. I think this committee is very vital for looking forward and for looking at what we're doing right now and making sure that the procedures and things that we have in place are working properly. I like the idea of a forensic audit. Those cost money. We have local volunteers that are both qualified to do those similar tasks and willing to do it for free for our city and help out under no cloak of secrecy, but in openness, you know, as an appointed committee through the city council. Yeah, there was a group of people that met and spoke about this because there were concerned citizens.
Under the title of this committee.
There was no
There
official.
was no title.
No, there's
There
no,
was
it
no
wasn't a minutes.
concerned citizens that came together and made recommendations. I mean, this is something they came up with as a group. Felt like this needs to be brought to council. I understand your opinion, and I don't want to put that down.
I can't see giving city resources time to a committee that started this way. I mean, transparency is of the utmost importance.
Thing is, it's all public data, and if people want to dig into this, which they're going to anyway, it would be.
That's fine, but we don't-
A large flurry of public records requests, which would take a lot more time. This is like a fish way to do it.
Well, let me ask a question, Mayor. Is the ad hoc committee in place at this time?
No, it's on hold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would the ad hoc committee be reinstated? With the.
There was never any
Well,
official anything
Would
done.
there ever, would you initiate an ad hoc committee if there was a council committee acting?
No, absolutely not. No, this is in place. We can get in place. Yeah, and it's a matter of access. It's a matter of having people involved. Right. So,
But there are channels for access, and we don't give access to anybody, you know, unfettered use of our city resources, which are precious, staff time, to anybody on the street. Yes, they can file a request for public information. Everybody can. There's a channel for doing so.
I've got a question for Warren on the draft of the council transparency. Is there any requirement for residence for the members?
I didn't think so, no.
Okay, there's no consideration given as to where they live, whether it be in this community or somewhere else?
I don't have it in front of me, but no, I think they were thinking this idea if they live in the county.
But it wasn't stated in the requirements.
Not that I saw.
that could be amended.
I guess the other concern is I think, personally, I'm gonna be tasked. I had a CPA that I would like to consider placing on this, but just in a general conversation with them, they have other intent to do it.
We had somebody send in an application or a resume.
We did, I forwarded it to
Right,
staff.
right.
She has a financial background.
And Mayor, can I ask why to expand beyond the membership that we had in the CMAC committee? What,
There's a few people I've met that are highly qualified in engineering and live here and would serve on the CMAC if this position. be a valuable member of that committee, but there's no provision for it.
Which circumvents the makeup of this.
Yeah.
So
Well, would you
having-
be agreeable to, I think you wanted to be able to recommend three people.
There's three that I know that have stepped up that want to serve, and I don't care how those are formulated, if they're at large and any of us can nominate, and choose, that's
That's
fine.
fine. I mean-
Yeah, I just want to be able to.
What about, how about if we go in this direction, that we have the five counselors recommend people that they have an interest in, and you recommend up to three that you haven't had a recommendation in, and then we narrow it down
That's fine.
by a council vote. And we hold it to put CNAC to six.
CNAC is sick.
So we hold it to six.
Fine.
And, it's, you know, if I don't find anybody.
Yeah, I just, that, I don't have warm body syndrome, somebody gets in there and then there's other people that are actually better qualified.
Right.
So, that's fine. Yeah, it was not about, I don't need them 0.3, it's just I wanted to make sure that we fit those people on it and set it up.
From an administration standpoint, this is constructed correctly, much like CMAC, this could actually be a really good tool. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see two groups running side by side because,
Well, that was the intent of my first question, is
Absolutely. Yeah.
if we can make that provision or whatever. But if that becomes apparent, then I'm not supporting.
No desire whatsoever to do that. And a motion.
I have a question.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, can you give me specific examples of tasks that you think this committee would be doing?
I'm not a expert in this space, or I can be more precise. One of the things that brought this up was I think you remember my first week of being on the SIDA card, I found out that a lot of people had access to our accounts that shouldn't have and could take the money pretty easily. And it's just about, we've never had a forensic audit of our books. We've never chased down things. So, making sure that what I would like to put as the first goal is to help the city become Transparency Star certified comptroller's office. I think in doing that, it would address most of the things we're talking about.
But we're not equating this to a forensic audit, are we?
I think we agree that
No.
we wouldn't do the forensic stuff through this.
No, but if they found reason to bring it to our attention, then that was it. They're sniffing it out. See if they stumble across something, we want them to know they can forward that to us. But yeah, getting the Transparency Star certification, I think would be a good milestone.
I guess I need to research that more. I don't know what else is involved with that.
It's the comptroller's office. It's like a lot of the certifications that they offer, are just certification on it.
But that's something that our staff could do without.
we can do it without, we can do it anyway.
And I'm wondering, how does the committee help us obtain that?
So right now, what we do get, basically that information, majority of the financial information comes from Sasha. I review it. This group would actually be an expert group, and I've seen that they'll provide us information that would give us 5 or 6 or 7 really good people that have a financial background. And it's really here more to help us than it would be to hinder us, and that's how I use it. So they would be very helpful, kind of like seeing that function does. And we welcome transparency, we welcome getting any help we can. But and that's how I think we.
If the proposed committee could be as successful and as much of an asset to our city as CMAC, and that would be a hard goal. They set a high bar. And I can't tell you how pleased and proud I am of all the efforts of everybody on that one committee. And if we followed the same diligence and had the same leadership on this one, it would be a benefit. So I am I would not want to see any members on this committee serving another interest independently. That would be what I would consider a conflict. So I would like to see some form of residency requirements. I understand that I do not want to limit it to people that live within the city limits, because we've got some assets that want to help our town that live outside the city limits. But I think they need to be vested in our community and not be a third party. I don't know why a third party would want to spend the time.
I agree.
I think that'd be
So
kind
what
of
would
flimsy, I guess.
city president, the county or?
Under 35-mile radius of the town, something like that, or 30-mile radius. To be knowledgeable of the hill country and our values. I think that would be reasonable. I think, no notable conflict of interest, and Rodney, I understand your concern and frustration that you found, but I don't want to get mad and cut my nose off like my fucking.
I appreciate your rational reaction.
Right, man. So we're.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so, I guess. Is there any more discussion before?
Like, I guess I have one more question. I'm wondering about the kind of time and work this would add to our city staff. With all, if documents.
It's gonna be a lot less time and effort than a public request for public information. So probably 1/4, 1/5.
So ultimately, yeah, the conversation with Tim, he spitballed three structures or three ways to accomplish that. And this was the one that was most efficient use of staff time. Primary one went this direction.
Warren, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe also that if the council has the right to disband this at any time at their discretion. It's not going in the direction we think it needs to go, or we don't think if it's more of a hindrance and a benefit to the city, we can pull the rug.
I agree with the answer of Councilmember Simpson's question is, you have a PIR, that generally means the city secretary putting together, pulling everything together, attorney review. I will tell you, I usually read everything that is the PIR, was like a PD issue, but it's a staff issue, I usually look at that. In this case, when you're actually talking about a committee that is on with the council, member could be there and they could pull information and just look over staff's shoulder. I'm not going to be supervised by, so it's not going to, this kind of committee will actually save me personal time and PIRs. That may be different for someone like Sasha or someone in the finance department, but they'll actually save me and the city secretary time. So this is a better use of our time doing a arm of council rather than just getting flooded with PIRs.
Okay, well, I'm gonna turn to Sasha for a second. And just ask if we were to implement this, how much time during a week with your current schedule could you contribute to assisting or interrupted by them? Would it be better to set a date and a time, or, on Wednesdays they could?
I guess it depends on what they're asking and how much they're asking for. I can set a little time a week, but I prefer if they have like a whole list to contact me and we can set up an appointment or whatever they're trying to get. Because I have things scheduled throughout certain.
Well, I understand your plate's full
And we're
already.
kind of short staffed, so I'm subbing in for other things also, so.
I guess then we need to put some provision in this that they're not overburdened to staff, and if it becomes burdensome, then we'll have to readdress it or figure out how to assist staff.
One thing I'd like to get through budget first before we
Yeah.
Oh,
get
yeah.
anything
I
done,
mean,
because
I don't
it's
think.
taking most of my time. I don't know.
But again, I guess basically, if we, once we form it, if we form this and get it put together, then we would, I think we'd have to set a discipline on how fast they could go so that we don't overburden.
This is ultimately a number of folks coming to me and saying they want to look into stuff, and we try to figure out how to best enable and accommodate that. They want to be a help to her, not be kind of.
We gotta be respectful of the.
Exactly, yeah, there's no intention of, yeah, it's all about being, what's right for the city, making it better. That's what the bottom line is.
So 4 hours a week, is that palatable?
I can't say yes or no because my day, like I said, fluctuates with everything I do. So
Right,
I don't want to say 4 hours a week and I can't give you that.
okay.
We don't know how this is.
I would say she has full discretion, you know.
Yeah, I guess. Okay.
Also, do you feel like this committee would be helpful to you? To the finance?
I mean, if they can look, like I said, they can look whatever they'd like to look. By all means, they can go in the past. I haven't been here that long, so they go in the past, they can go in the future. I don't know actually what they're gonna need from me, so I can't give you time period. I can't give you anything like that. I don't know what they're really looking for, what they're, so I can't really answer you.
Right, that's still my question is, you know, instead of all.
And once again,
It's very clear.
yeah, yeah, so that's why I said, I think that transparency star would be a good, you know, benchmark, and there's different levels of that.
But it's not clear to me how this group would help us achieve that. If there was some achievable goals, that might be more interesting.
It kind of seems like this is just a reaction to state law and public information requests.
No, the conversation with Tim, again, this couldn't be done ad hoc. Yeah, private citizens looking at public data, not all day long, but that's different. I understand that. But in talking through this scenarios with Tim, he said, you know, that the most efficient way to do it would be similar to this way. It also gives it that much, you know, more oversight, more input from council. So yeah, this is the more efficient way, and it's the cleaner way to do it.
I guess if there are going to be people in this, I would like it to be transparent. Open for everyone.
Are we working on a motion over there?
Looking at one. This is gonna be in reference to the Committee for Financial Transparency, and Security. And I would like to note that we'll have a provision in there that there will be no conflict or other committees with any of the members. I would also require or ask that we consider a residing residency location within, let's just say 20 miles of Waco, like the other side of Johnson City. I would ask that we have a point contact, preferably the chair or a point contact with the committee, and they would come to the city's associate. So she doesn't have multiple people coming into her asking redundant questions or different questions. Let them field the questions that way, because I don't want it to be overburdensome. So that's the burden.
And you want it to be whittled down to 6 members after all
Well,
nominations.
A lot of things. And we'll go, if I have 2 people and you have 3 people, then that's fine. We can, and then we can pull those together. We'd ask them to provide us with a statement of qualifications. And then we can sit down. So that would be,
We have a second.
I second that.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 31.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's longer than I expected. Thank you. Now, we're going on to budget workshop number 2.
So mayor, council, residents, you're gonna, if you have the sheet in front of you, I had a couple council members ask me to try to make this a little bit more, organized so that, you know, the expectations are tonight and the process. So I'm gonna try to do that right now. Intro, I'm gonna speak for 5 minutes, don't time me, but I really think it's all done in 5 minutes. After I'm done with my portion of explaining tonight, Councilor Moses had asked me to put together a sheet of some ideas that he had. And so he would do a presentation if he'd like, and then the mayor also wanted to talk about some priorities. Kind of take a step back and review priorities, and then go back towards both the general fund and the enterprise. After that presentation, again, these minutes are just guides. It doesn't mean that we're gonna touch off of 20 or touch it this week of 20. And then there's gonna be a police department presentation from Chief Rubin to kind of explain priorities of that budget. That's about 50% of the budget. We're going to go that. All of those things, those first 4 or 5 issues, and then we already tightened the budget. Sasha will go over any general fund numbers that those presentations cover and anything else that council would like to cover. And then the hope is to get through the enterprise fund tonight. Not to say that we'll actually approve the enterprise fund, but that you've at least gone through it and had that. We have set up 3 budget workshops. The next page. And we'll go back to the calendar. The budget workshops can be moved around, and there's 3, but you can have a 4th if you really need it. And what I want you to understand is that on July 14th, and the deadline can move around a little bit, we're going to file a proposed budget to the city secretary. By state law, it has to be there at least 30 days for the residents to review, think about, and during that time, we can make changes to the minor changes to the budget. I know some cities do more than that. Our hope is that you have a proposed budget that is solid by July 14th. Not saying you can't make a few changes after that, but there's 30 days, and I think what you have at least 30 days, and then what we have at the very end is a budget adoption on the 21st. That goes with the tax rate. The 15th. The 15th of the tax rate, the budget adoption deadline is the 21st. But again, some of these dates can move around or can't move around, as we have to have this for 30 days. So that is why we want to try to file the budget with the city secretary. So that's the calendar dates. And these are the dates that are specific if we're going to go over what we call the voter approved rate, which is 3.5%. You're going to do that because of some other deadlines. We have to follow this notice. We go with the voter approved, it can actually slide a few weeks, and then we'll explain that later. Next page. Remember that last page of the budget?
Well, I think so small, I just said.
So without any changes to the budget of the general fund, without anything, if you didn't bless it tonight, which I'm not expecting you to, if you do that and you do agree to a 5% ad valorem increase, we will actually have in the black $36,168.10. To let you know, we only have a fund balance right now of $250,000. So what we need to start looking at is not just having a balanced budget this year. Last year we didn't have a balanced budget. A couple years before that we did it as well. We also need to start adding to the fund. But we have tightened things up, and we've gotten to the point where it's 5% for ad valorem raise, and that would be the amount that we have. We're still at the enterprise fund and we'll get back to that later, but we are still looking at an increase on that. But without any changes, that's really what we're looking at. So, having said that, that's just kind of an overview of what's going to happen tonight and in the next few weeks. And if the mayor or council member Moses would like to start with their priority, we can queue up whatever we have.
I'd like to just give a sort of bigger picture step back if I may. And have a conversation with a few folks. I know both of y'all, Warren and Sasha, you're here, and I know that a lot of the recording and the accounting is night and day for before, and that's much appreciated. The process where you folks come in, sworn in, and then jump right into budget didn't give a whole lot of room for looking at the process itself and possibly rejiggering it. I think next year it's a bit different. What it felt like was we sit down and say, here's the budget, let's go line item. And we started going into individual things instead of looking at the big picture. Like I think all of us have found with a lot of things around here, there's not necessarily a previous wisdom to how things are structured. It's pretty much random, ad hoc. You never know what you're going to find. And the budget process of just doing more of the same, it is, to me, we need to step back from that. And what I mean by that is pretty much most of these numbers are, this is last year's actual, so let's make that this year's budget. So it's by definition more of the same. And it's layering on top of things that might not have been done right before. Or things like I had the Ordura invoice in our city engineer. Their budget last year, as I recollect, it was $16,000, and as of now, they're already over $160,000. And the right answer is not, let's just make that this year's budget. The right answer is, let's look at why the heck that happened. And looking through these invoices, it's clear that, well, from one perspective, we're definitely a fat client for them. My own track record with them, when we were looking at the the fire station, I asked if they could give an engineering analysis of it. They said, sure. I said, how much will that cost us? I said, I'll get back to you. Next thing I know, there's a calendar item that they're going to go up and do this thing. I said, do that. I want to know how much it's going to cost. And they still haven't given that to us. But they would have sent a crew up here and they would have quickly known how much it cost because they would have stuck it on our bill. And I get, just by looking through that, appears to be a lot of that. Hey, go look at that fence post. They give you a report. You didn't know that 6 guys sit around and talked about it for 4 hours and put a $6,000 bill on it. It came through a lot later. There's a lot of fact. That's what I'm getting at. And we need to look at those things before we just say that's this year's budget. I'm doing that as best I can. I believe within work with Barbie to put in place a policy now, if anybody's going to task the engineer or the attorney above a certain level to do work on our behalf, that there needs to be a work order. There needs to be an estimate of hours, and there needs to be authorization of that. I think that will rein it in. I think with this is one budget alone, I think we can knock off legitimately $50,000-$60,000 of fluff that's in here that we didn't spend. So that's the bigger picture. I want to look at those things. I don't have philosophically, I can't in good conscience advocate raising taxes when we're not getting our money's worth out of everything else. So that's my kind of big picture conversation. I want to look at things more in balance than just jump into line items. What I'm going to propose when we get down to it, I believe we can field a full-time maintenance crew to fill potholes and fix city assets, which for some reason was done away with. We can do that. And I'm told a crew like that, 2 people can fill every pothole in town in a year. We could have done that for less than we spent on this last patching job. Do that, if we do that, the total budget for that year one would be about $210,000. We can do that and apply $50,000 to the retaining wall. And we don't increase taxes, which is about $175,000. That means we need to find about $435,000 in this budget to accommodate that. We apply the COVID funds towards that. That leaves us about $180,000 of that to find to be able to balance the budget, not raise taxes, and fill up our pockets. Very doable. We can do that. So that's what I'm going to propose is specific for how we can get that.
Okay, and in reference to your question about Ardura and their billings and them exceeding where, tenfold what we had anticipated. So I think, that's a warranty question. I respect it. But, I think when we're coming in, we're establishing our budget, we've got to use some of our historic data. And I think if we went and scrutinized their billing, I don't think we're going to reduce 90%.
That might be,
Well, okay, but I'm just saying, I think that's all well and good.
we're 160 to 110 is doable.
Okay. We're on a timeline to approve this budget. And I think we need to do our due diligence to make sure that we don't over exceed, especially when we're trying to control any possible tax increase or anything of that nature. And I think you do that post budget. We've got them out to July the 14th. And I think that's insurmountable for us to try to tackle that. Having right now one more meeting. I don't see, I think it's warranted, but it's not a condition of the budget. I guess basically I don't have a positive response to the pothole crew. I do have a position that I think we need to allocate at least $70,000 out of our budget, and I have an idea as to how we might do that. But I'm gonna let, I guess, y'all got your say, and I've interrupted again. So I'm gonna stand down, let Ryan do his.
And I would say one thing before Mr. Moses gets started here, when you do look at both the bills from Ardura and from our city attorney, they are split between both the enterprise and the general fund. So it's letting you know, so when you see that, and you see these X amount, that's between the two.
Yeah, I've got it compiled.
Thank you, sir.
And we're already on track to, with the renegotiation, we can probably save about 30,000 off that attorney bill.
Right, I've seen that, and that's, right.
Yeah, and again, this is same haircut we applied to Ardura, I think, with that. I don't think it's right, Mike, to take something that was last year's actual, which we know is fluff, and just say that's this year's budget. I think we need some kind of happy medium at least. You can't just say, hey, you're free to spend this much.
Well, I mean, you've got your opinion, I've got mine. I mean, I know historically what it costs us to do it. And so I think that's information that we can use. We can set a goal to reduce that spending by some disciplines like the work orders and things that you suggested. Sure. But I don't want to use those numbers going in and find out we're wrong and be on the budget because we've got, I guess, we're pulling out of our reserves, and we can't keep doing that. If we keep doing that, we'll be insolvent. And if we assume that we can reduce Ardura 30%, whatever the number is, and we don't, and we pop it in the red, we've got to start building our reserves, not having any exposure to deplete them because, 18 months?
Well, you have $250,000 in, yeah, I mean, probably 18 months for general fund and 12 to 18 months in enterprise fund.
Right.
We have to.
I mean, we knew that we'd have a deficit budget when we approved this last year. And we were working towards getting everything corrected. We have a lot better numbers than we had last year and 1,000 times better.
Best numbers we've ever had. That's the only reason we can pick through it like this. We've never had numbers.
No, so, and some of the numbers that we developed were bland because it wasn't segregated out of our accounting system. So, thank you, Sasha. So, but I don't have to. It just, that's not my wife, I'm thinking about all the time, but she's right here.
Councilman Moses, I know you had.
Well,
Your guys' plans sound a lot softer than mine. I'm sure they'll go over a lot better. I kind of went through the numbers myself, of the discussion. Talked to a lot of people, and of course, opinions vary. Many of our citizens are completely happy with what's going on. Many more of them aren't happy about what's going on. The biggest concern on most people's plate is money at the moment. The economy's in a rough spot right now. Obviously, money coming in to us is not enough. We're trying to get through this without raising taxes. But the bottom line is I know we probably have one of the best administrators and best police chiefs in the state of Texas. I will commend you guys for the hard work that you're doing, good job that you do. Do we deserve to have the best? Absolutely. Can we afford it? Not necessarily. I think there's some ways we can think outside the box. I put some numbers together that are shocking. I don't know if you have what we're looking at there, guys. Were you able to compile the parameters that I was doing?
Yes, so on the admin portion here, anything that I have highlighted, to match parameters, it affected those that are highlighted, those GL. And pretty much, if you want me to say it, he, proposed to cut, one admin staff position. That's why you see, mostly here, the dental health salary, it is one position in the admin staff.
I think they added, originally our admin, cost was $701,000. Councilmember Moses asked for $611,663. But they're making us cut, so we got $624,636. So she just mentioned that would be the value of the admin. So that's a cut. 701 to 624. One of those are PD.
And then, on the PD budget, again, if you look at the highlighted numbers, those again affect benefits and salary. And that actually, the numbers are quite drastic compared to this current year's budget. That is actually, I think it's one admin position in the PD and 3, police officers. So that's a total of 4 positions, but actually 3 police officers and 1 admin, but all in the PD department. And Warren can
Does that include the one that's not currently filled?
Correct. So there's the one that's not
Correct.
filled, 2 officers, admin, council member requested, we had $1,269,656. His request of that to be $951,562. But the number that we got to with those specific cuts was $968,492.34. Let's think that.
Okay, well, on the PD, you know, due to those positions getting eliminated, it did bring down, you know, a little fuel costs, some survey, but again, it's all pertaining to how many officers and staff that you have, in that department. So with those changes that, Mr. Moses wanted, you can see up here at the 5%. On the other one, it was, in the plus of 36,000 something. If we did the 5%, or even if we do the no new revenue, we're in the plus at 109. So no matter what percentage that you did or no percentage with his, things that he wanted to do, this is where you would come in.
And Sasha, if I'm not mistaken, we can be in the black by a tax increase of 5%.
Correct, it could be 36,000 in the black, but with Brian Moses' stuff.
It's less than CPI. How's that?
It's less than CPI, but that does not include what a couple of council members have requested, which is creating a you know, an infrastructure maintenance crew. So I think that is also the
Oh,
numbers.
yes.
So that is, so if you want to explain that, it's
Okay.
Councilmember and the mayor, I think, was looking at those
Um,
options.
Okay, so, I forgot, with all the cuts in both departments, like the mayor was talking about having a two-man crew, like a maintenance infrastructure crew to do potholes and among other things. With their benefits for those two, new people, we would bring aboard that would be maintenance infrastructure workers. That would be 112 for the two new personnel to cover any maintenance pretty much throughout the year, which also reflects in the total numbers that.
Now, when you did that, did you take out the 40,000 lawn mowing?
Yes, I took out the 40 and I replaced it with your two maintenance.
Okay, so that's making it 72 net.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But I don't think there's anything for materials or.
No, yeah,
That's-
Just benefits and
Yeah, I'm not making
the
cuts
hourly
elsewhere,
rate.
not applying for.
So elimination of a total of 5 city employees. That part?
Add to.
4 and add 2.
Yes.
Yes. So eliminate
So
part one and add two new ones.
Which position is involved?
So what we'd end up doing is, you'd be moving the finance clerk that is in the general fund to the enterprise fund. And this person would also be working with, basically doing the permit clerking and the water utility. So in a sense, you lose position of water utility billing clerk, and the person that's currently the finance clerk would do a variety of both jobs, and we have to rejigger what everybody does to kind of cover that. So you, in a sense, have five people in the administration instead of 6. So you do
That's a hardship.
administration.
That's it's a hardship particularly.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we're gonna have to see it. Right now, it seems to be okay, but we'll have to see how
That plays out.
how it plays out, and how we'll also have to make sure that we're serving the public. And I'm not sure if that's doable, but we're trying to work on it.
Gotcha. Thank you, Commissioner. Councilman Moses. Oh, okay. I'm still thanking you.
Okay.
No, I see some grim faces. I understand. Those are some shocking numbers to see out there. There's a reason I had to do that. Those are the numbers I would like to do. But I don't want to lose staff, and I don't want to lose any of our police department. If necessary, it will. So what I'm asking you guys to do is step up and show us that you are best at what you do, and I believe you are. We need to find new avenues for revenue and funding fast. I'd be willing, if you were to find a way to adjust just your budgets to that, to where you accept that amount of money out of this pool of money that we have. We need to find new forms of revenue. One, I have in mind that it's possible sales of properties that we have in holdings of the city, other forms of revenue. I would be willing to allocate those funds to prop those budgets back up.
Your thought is set the budget list and then if we find additional revenue.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Moses, these steps that you're proposing, they in no way take into consideration the services that we're providing. Is that true?
Yes. That's where, more than anything, I'm presenting a challenge to these guys. Not necessarily go firing people yet, but just know that I don't necessarily have political support, but I know I have a lot of public support on this. I would like to see your numbers that come out of this budget be that. Let's find some additional revenue. Now, I'm pretty sure that I've got other council members up here that aren't willing to support those kind of drastic cuts, and I understand that. I'm also a rational and logical person. Realistically, those are the numbers I want to see, guys. I understand that in the end, that may not be the numbers we can vote for, but I do not want to vote for tax increases. I will not. I want to see some road repairs going on. I want to see a balanced budget and some money getting out of the process. How we get there, yeah, there's a lot of hurdles to overcome. I don't think we're looking at this important supported true goals here, guys. Got to make some serious steps, make them fast, right the ship. And I think we have the right people to do that job. I don't want to cut that money from the budget. Let's find a way around this, but I'm telling you right now that that's the kind of numbers I want to see coming in. That's the solutions I want to see. Please help us find them. That's my idea. If we can't figure out a better solution, that's what I'm pushing for, guys.
Councilmember,
Closest thing to it.
we're not suggesting that the police department should be a revenue generating department.
No, I think our city needs to find ways to generate revenue, and that may be, like I said, possible property sales, holdings that we have.
That would be short term.
That's a short term, but
That's liquidating assets.
Yes.
And that's not revenue.
that's not revenue. That's correct. But the profit from liquidating those assets is revenue. I would consider it revenue. We need to move forward with some infrastructure repairs, larger than what we have money. So with this, I'll be honest, I'm not dead set on these numbers that I've had them bring forward, but I can tell you right now, we need to be moving in that direction a lot quicker. I wanted this more as kind of an eye opener. Chief, I don't want you to fire a bunch of people. I don't want to send that person home from the administration. I know you guys are shorthanded. You're working hard for us. I appreciate it. But I'm not giving enough solutions. I don't have all the solutions to offer you today either, so that's on me as well. I want to see this budget get tightened up this somehow, some way, and if it takes liquidation of assets, whatnot, to help us move towards the goal that we need to achieve. Other years in the future, as things are going better, I can see raising taxes. Right now, I don't know about you guys. I'm having a hard time. We don't want it. So that matters to me. And a lot of the people that live out here in the if we could stave off 1 year and not increase their property taxes, at least at the city level, we can't control what the county does. We can't control what the ES does. But if we could stave off the tax increase at the city level and help our people for even 1 year, who knows what the next year holds? Yeah, our economy is not looking good. It looks like it's on the way down. I don't know. I'm just letting you know what's going on in my home. Things are getting tight. I don't like the idea of any type of tax increase. I want to find a way to make these two departments work efficiently. I believe that they're working about as efficiently as they can. There's obviously some fat and some fluff in there that we're going to try to cut. Part of it is just due diligence with our attorney and with our engineers, but I want to see drastic moves taken, guys. The majority of the people who live in this city want to see that too. They feel like we're not being properly represented. One of the other things that's been brought to my attention is I'm a strong advocate of getting on speeders coming through our town. I've sat there myself and pushed chief to get those numbers up, get people pulled over. Well, it's also come to my attention that the more people we pull over, the more people we end up having to arrest because they're finding violations that they cannot just turn a blind eye to. They're required by law to arrest these violators for whether it be an outstanding warrant or whatever. That ends up costing our citizens a lot of revenue to have one of his officers haul somebody up to the county clean. The more officers we have, the more pullovers we have, the more arrests we have. And it's my understanding that the majority of our arrests come from traffic stops to get on.
A percentage, yes.
Okay, so we have to evaluate what is it we are asking for. You know, I've sat here myself and asked them, get more people pulled over, write more tickets. In the end, more people are getting arrested and it's costing our city more money in the process. And our arrest numbers are going up and now it looks like maybe we need more officers. I don't know. It's more officers. It's more people. Yeah, exactly. So
We're asking for the officers to pull over more individuals who are speeding under 10 miles.
that's where I'm walking that back right now. I'm publicly walking that back because I have had it brought to my attention. What I'm asking for is costing this city more money. Well, I'm learning this as I go, but am I right, chief? Is
It doesn't cost us more money, sir. I'm talking about amounts. So what I've been saying all along is, so with one officer on duty, when that officer is out being proactive in a traffic stop, and the officer makes an arrest, there is no one left in the city to enforce traffic, to protect the people of the city, to control the neighborhoods, to handle calls, to respond to violence calls, to handle mental health calls. With two officers on duty, you can assign them different responsibilities. I can assign someone to traffic, I can assign someone to take calls. And that call, when the traffic stop results in arrest, to have an officer available to back that person up. That person can start transporting that individual to jail. The cover officer can sit there the 30 minutes it takes to get the tow truck here and still be available to take calls. Most officers are reluctant to work more traffic when they don't have backup because of what they may get into. And that's a national statistic. So when you look at staffing, so a couple things are I won't say concerning is the right word, but we provide a service do not generate revenue. And so there's no function of a police department that is designed to create revenue. We're designed to create safety, safe streets, safe atmosphere, and a place that people feel welcome to come and spend their money, which is what then creates revenue for the city. So when we don't have adequate police coverage, we don't have adequate public safety, the primary revenue stream of this city, as far as I know, is tourism. And when you have crime rates and lack of public safety, your tourism dollar will dissipate.
And since we're talking about taking people to jail, we're in a different position than, say, Johnson City, where the jail is located, correct?
Yes, sir.
So there is an argument to be made that we actually need more resources allocated to our department because our jail is in another city, 15 miles.
Yes. So 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back, that's 30 minutes without an hour. So they're also on any arrest, the officer is just on transport stop. But remember, the arrest starts with not necessarily the traffic stop. Mayor wrote out yesterday, let's say that individual did not voluntarily go. So you have a response time, you have dealing with the issue time, you have clearing a house time, you have medical clearance time, then you have the arrest time, then you have the transport time, then you have the booking time, then you have driving back to the city time, and then you have the 2-3 hours worth of report writing time. And while all that's going on, the 2,000 people who live here have no one proactively patrolling the city.
To the councilman's point about Johnson City, of all that time, the only difference between us and them is 1 hour. Whether they get
is-
their
is-
lights now, because they got to drive a little bit too, they're not resting in front of the jail, so.
So
Oh, they-
Johnson City is, the entire city of Johnson City is 1.8 miles, and the jail is in the middle of that 1.8
Sure.
miles.
But all the other.
We're 0.35, we're at 3.5 miles, 15 miles away from the Johnson City limits. So all things are not the same in that when our officer is the only one on duty, they have an arrest. That 15 minutes is the difference in life or death, because when the Johnson City officer is booking a prisoner in the jail and it hits the fan in Johnson City, their response time is still less than 1.8 miles to travel. The minute our officer walks into the Blanco County Jail and it hits the fan and they say, "Jailer, come take this guy, I'll be back," it's at least a 14-minute longer response than Johnson City has, and everything goes perfect.
Chief, are there other law enforcement agencies that, since we're talking about Johnson City, that are stationed in Johnson City?
So the sheriff's office in Johnson City, there's a constable's office also in Johnson City.
That would seem to be an advantage as well.
Absolutely. So during the daytime, and they're, at nights, their patrol officers should be throughout the county, just like our officers should not be at the mediation here on the city. During the daytime, they have their additional backup is, they have a lot bigger administration staff than we have. They have additional investigators than we have. They have a warrant officer that we don't have, that are all located at the law enforcement center in Johnson City.
And that difference justifies the reason they have a full staff of 8 and a budget of 700,000.
I'm gonna present that in my presentation, or, we can do this however y'all want. I mean, if y'all want me to answer questions, I'm happy to, but that's material I have to provide. So I be respectful of y'all's time.
Absolutely.
I was looking at the police budget and as well. But my initial thought was not as aggressive as Moses, but I was looking at reducing one officer and then giving it further, it's $70,000. And giving that consideration, we've got right at $250,000 that is a reserve from our COVID money. And I would propose that we effectively use $70,000 of that and place it to fund that officer that I was looking at, and that $70,000 that was there, I wanted to move to the potholes, which could be a portion of the funds needed for that. I know it's not as extensive, but at least it's a commitment. We had committed roughly $100,000 a year the last 2 years and waited till the second year to spend the money so we could get the economy of scale and get more work done. So that would be the direction I would be looking at.
Tax.
I think if our tax increase is no more than a CPI, that is. I pay my taxes and premise, told myself and the wall and everything else. But still, I don't see a place. I think we're all in concurrence that we've got about get that budget close to balance and then start trying to figure out how to generate help our reserves. I think we balance off the numbers we have now. Allocate $70,000. We can't, I don't know if we can take it out of COVID funds and put it into the streets. Put it into the police department, take that police department money and put it into the streets. It's just a different avenue. So that would free up, if we had an additional $70,000 to fund on the police budget, we'd have that to put on the other. And last year we did an 8% increase, and if we had no bleed, it's probably be solid right now. So I'm asking for a 5% increase with the goal that soon we won't have any increase. You're we've got to have additional revenue. And our revenue sources are property taxes, or general fund, or property taxes and, sales tax. And that's it. I mean, there is no other revenue. If we start liquidating assets, it's accomplishing the same thing as taking it out of a reserve. That asset is held. If we liquidate that asset, we can move it over to reserve and start building our reserve back up.
And pay down some debt that frees up some monthly payments or anything.
So
Here's
that's
some
what,
solutions. That's good.
well,
I said, I'm starting to hear solutions. I like it.
okay, well,
So that's-
one thing I didn't make was this,
Let's let the chief jump into a presentation and we can.
I'm done for now. Yeah, I'm done for now.
We're good with that. Chief, floor is yours.
Mayor, council, thank you. So, like you, sir, I am not a fan of just taking a budget and adding to it and calling it a budget. But when I got here, there was no budget preparation. I had numbers. So my first year here, there was a lot of wags. But then the budget has been adjusted line item by line items for my department every year since then. Adjusted some higher, some lower, some things we've accomplished, some things we've back. So what I wanted to do in this is instead of just jumping into numbers, I wanted to start back with the 5-year strategic plan that I submitted with strategic steps in each areas that I identified were issues that we as a police department needed to address and build my budget around what it took physically to address the issues that I had discovered and brought to my attention when I was appointed as chief. And so we don't need to go through all these. I gave you a copy of this. This is a document that was distributed to council back in June of 2021. So as you can see, as we go through these priorities, they match budgets that's presented today. So this was not just random numbers. So as you kind of go through those, you'll see back in 2021, the second thing on here was maintain recognized status. So we achieved accreditation as an agency. Continue to monitor the staffing requirements for patrol with a short-term goal of 2 patrol officers assigned per shift. So this was something that I was asked during the hiring process. I had not even been offered the job or accepted the job. And I was asked, how many officers do we need? And my answer then, as it is now, is I cannot give you an honest answer because I have no data to support the officer's activity. So give me a year to start building data, and I'll tell you how many officers we need. And I think that that's what we've done, and that's what we've presented for the last couple of years. And as reflected in council's decision last year, it was to fund those additional positions. So as we go through this again, it's just the strategic plan. And then I want to, so the last part of that, and it talks about everything. It talks about, but the last page of the strategic plan is officer recruiting and retention. Because I think it's very important to point out, probably, I was driving to work today and I heard the nurses in Austin are going on strike because they don't feel appreciated and they're all leaving and they have to work 12-hour days. So the nurses are angry and the nurses don't want to. And I started listening to their complaints. And I was like, oh my God, sounds well like the police officer. We're not allowed to go on strike. But we're recruiting and retention. So right now, nationally, recruiting for police officers is 25% low. That's a national average. There's 25% shortage of police officers. My concern is not just in recruiting, but it's retaining the officers we have. And I appreciate you saying you really don't want, we're not going to cut 4 officers, right now. But just I ask you to think about the impact that would have on the existing officers. That is 1/3 of my overall department strength. Is actually more than 1/3 because one of my 12 officers is funded by the school district and assigned to the school as the SRO. So that more than cuts my departments by 1/3. If you were a young officer coming to a place to be a police officer and you came in with a strategic plan in place, it's a place you can grow and build a career, and all of a sudden, one third of your fellow officers were gone. What does that do to your retention strategy and your future recruitment strategy? So not built into the slide deck, but the average cost to hire and train a police officer is $30,000. So if we get rid of 3 officers, we've just basically given up $120,000. And on top of their salaries, we'll have to reinvest when we decide to right size the department in the future, if we can help. So staffing considerations. So there's many different ways places come up with staff. So the most comprehensive or the best way to determine what your staffing needs are going to be based on the demands of your community. You cannot compare the demands of your community on any other community. There are no 2 communities that are exactly alike. And I'll get to some future slides on why we don't do that. So again, the fundamental question is, how many police officers does a particular agency need? It's about managing workforce levels regardless of whether there's a shortage of qualified officers or an ability to support previous staffing levels. So what is the demand? How many officers meet the demand? So we have to determine what that demand is. The per capita approach, it doesn't account for all kinds of things. It doesn't incorporate service area size, weather patterns, physical barriers, doesn't account for non-crime related functions, activities, traditionally performed by police as community demographics, economic characteristics dictate. In some, the per capita method does not consider community context for determining staffing needs. So just because you have a city with the same population somewhere else, demographics are different, the terrain is different, the area of coverage is different, and the expectations of that community is different on what do they expect of their police. And unfortunately, go back one, please. So unfortunately, the discussion we're having tonight is not a new discussion. Communities faced with difficult budgetary decisions often look at public safety for potential cutbacks. This approach, the city or town predetermines a specific level of staffing that fits within the budget of that community. Essentially, this is the what can I afford model, as opposed to one that is based on actual needs of the community. And really, that's the conversation we're having tonight. We have a predetermined number, and we're going to fit our staffing needs to that number instead of our staff are determining the appropriate staffing and figure out how to get to that number. The danger here is that staffing decisions can become politicized or predicated on an artificial figure. The ability of a community to pay for services in previous years or a change in political administrations does not necessarily sound foundation on which to make police staffing decisions. So again, Mayor, like you talked about earlier, that's the point. So what is the strategic plan? Right? So here's the strategic plan that's in place, and to change that plan every time there's a new administration is very difficult to continue with the strategic plan, and that's true in any organization. So budget comparisons. So this is the deal when you compare one city to another city. And so cities, the problem with cities is not a problem. They don't even label their services the same, right? So when you compare us to another city, and I'll use Johnson City, for example. Johnson City puts their solid waste in their general fund. So that changes the percentage of the budget for the police department. Because if you use our budget as comparison, it's over $300,000 that's now thrown into the budget. When you take a city like Castroville, their police department does police, emergency management, animal control, and their community development department does code enforcement. But if you just take in Castroville's budget the 3 items that fall under the police department, and you add those numbers to the police department's budget, that shoots them up 3 percentage points when you compare percentages. Bunch of these cities have fire and EMS that Blanco doesn't provide, right? Our fire and EMS, they do a great job. It's the ESD, that's a separate taxing entity. But everyone in Blanco, the citizens of Blanco, pay 10 cents that goes just to fire and EMS. That number is roughly $525,000, 525,788. If we created that line item on our budget, because the taxpayers are paying that 10 cents, and they're getting that service. So if we try to get as close to apples as we can, and we build that number into the city's budget, and we move our trash, we call it garbage, other places call it solid waste, and we take that from the utility fund, we use the same dollar amount, put it to our general fund, it drops the police department percentage to 36%. I didn't change any numbers. I just took something from here, put it there, and that was only of two of the cities that we compare ourselves to. A bunch of those cities have airports, golf courses, RV parks. So, one, I guess on revenue, I mean, I guess they're making money off airports, golf courses, and RV parks. But to do a comparison from one city to the other, it's very difficult to do. Castroville, when you look at the dollar amount, they have the same number of officers we have, and our budgets are almost identical. So when you look at the number of officers and what the budget is to do the functions that they do are the same functions that we do, our dollar amounts are almost identical. Until you consider the fact that all these comparisons are based on our proposed budget and their current budget. So when I call some of these other chiefs and I say, what's your budget looking like for next year? Well, I'm not asking for any bodies, but I need 3 new cars. I'm gonna tell you that's about $150 or $150,000. Or when I say, I look through your budget because it's all online, and when you hire a new officer, where do things come from? Like, I have to pay to get them psychological exams, and I have to pay to get them medical exams. So do you pay for that, or is the applicant? So will we pay for that? Well, I don't see that in your budget. Well, the city pays for that. So when you look at Blanco Police Department's budget, everything is broken out by department. I pay for my own staples, I pay for my own paper, I pay for my own janitorial service, I pay for my own toilet paper, pay for my own gas, brake checks, registration, guns, IT, everything. These other cities don't all do that. Their non-departmental is a lot bigger than ours. Our budget is an actual, what does it cost to run the police department? And we're not hiding stuff in other departments. So I think there's a danger there when we try to compare ourselves to other places. And that's that chart represented. When we add fire and EMS, that's our chart. And we put fire and EMS and garbage in there. And then to be fair, if we're using last year's numbers, we used $250,000 or whatever COVID money for streets. That wasn't budgeted. Because the other thing when you look at a percentage is, it doesn't take into account how much did they go over budget. Because based on and it just so happened, and I'll get to another slide, when I did a comparison on our call volume. But when I got here at the end of July, and they told me I was $30,000 over budget. Well, you haven't had a chief since May. You're short an officer and you got a part-time officer. You're $30,000 over budget. Well, I can build you a budget to get the number you want, but I'm not going to guarantee I'm not going to break that budget by doing everything we need to get done. And so I think it's also important to look at when you look historically at budgets, were they able to maintain that budget, or was there fictitious numbers? Because I can tell you that we're going to sell, I don't know, 500 golf cart permits this year at $100 a pop, and we'll balance the budget. But I can't tell you that with a straight face because there's no way in hell we're going to sell that many golf cart permits. But I'm telling you, there's cities that do that to balance the budget. So again, just as police role in society expanded historically, so too is the responsibilities, especially, police department. We try to be community police. So when you look at staffing, you look at the expense of the departments. What is the community expectations of that department? And when I came to Blanco, the things I heard about the Blanco Police Department were horrific. No offense to the guys who are here. But it was just bad. I didn't hear anything good about this one. So when y'all tell me, well, I talk to our residents, they don't like this, they don't like that. Well, I wish they'd come talk to me, because the people that come talk to me tell me about how glad they are that the department's changed, how professional the department is, how they like seeing the officers in the community waiting to residents, how they like us being responsive to their needs, When I walk into one of the stores, ma'am,
No.
yes. Oh, people are upset, I won't let you shoot paintballs at speeders on 281. If that's the biggest complaint I get, I'm the most successful speeder in this.
Hey, I talked her down throwing bricks and balls and stuff.
I didn't know she would freeze them. So, sabotage, I lost it out of that. So when the residents talk to me, they tell me these things, or I walk into a business on the square and someone comes up and hugs me, it's like, oh, where's your wife? Where's your daughter? I don't believe that that's the police department you had back in the days where you're trying to get our budget back to. So community policing, it's a departmental deal. When you have to hire an officer to call the community policing division to go around to mend all the broken fences that your rude patrol officers created all day, you've lost touch. To me, when the police department has to put serving our community on the side of the car, I shouldn't have to remind the community that. When they see City of Blanco Police Department, they should know we're here to serve this community. I'm gonna get into a slide later, but more than that we are a part of this community. So I went back as far as I could on our CAD system. So these numbers are generated from the computer-aided dispatch system that all the agencies in Kendall County and Blanco County are dispatched from. So it starts in 2020. I'll grant you all 2020, we're dealing with COVID and other stuff, so everybody's numbers went out great. So in 2020, I need better glasses and more light. That's what I do. No, no, but I figured out so you can see that. It's more important people can see that than I can read this.
Flashlight.
Yeah, that works. So 2789, somebody with better vision, correct me if I'm wrong. That was our calls for service in 2020. You jump ahead year to date. This is as of May 31st of this year. 2,813. And then when you do the math and you say, okay, that's 5 months, we extrapolate, we do this, we do that, we'll get Benno, please, mathematical genius to help come out with this number for the projected number. 6,750 anticipated calls for service at the end of this year. And the same time this year that we had in 2020, from 2789 to 6750. And just coincidentally, when I saw the number that you suggested, sir, the last time the police department had a budget of that much was 2020. So I'll tell you, we're getting less than half the work. Or not half the money.
And people have a say. Sir, people here have a say. It said have to work, but does that translate to public?
So again, the biggest problem we have in law enforcement is the most important thing we do is deter crime. I can't tell you what that number is. I can tell you when I first started here, when people lived in the subdivision said, I've never seen a police sergeant here till you got here. I've never had a policeman wait to me till you got here. But the fact that we're seeing that now leads me to believe that we're deterring crime. But how do you measure things? See, I'm trying to use, hard fact, and I can't use abstract comparison. You can never put a number on the number of deterrents. When you look at our violent crime rate, I'm going to tell you, most of it happens inside people's houses, right? Since I've been here 3 years, we've had one assault. Well, we've had some at Quinceañeras at Yet Park and other places, but when it involved just on the square, we had one assault that I can remember in 3 years that happened with non-residents inside their own homes. And I'm gonna tell you, that was a domestic case that wound up out here. It wasn't just some lady getting out of her car, getting jumped by people in London. When I look at our property crime rate, I think we have things reported that other places don't report, but I want people to do that because it drive up numbers is not why I do it. So we're aware of it. You've heard of broken windows there. So if you get your spare tire stolen from outside your yard and you don't report it, and you get your spare tire stolen from outside your yard and you don't report it, and you get your spare tire, then we don't know what's happening. That's the kind of tough stuff we have. We have our local people breaking into storage units here. And we have a lot of people coming from out of town. So you think about, we're 14 miles from Johnson City, 25 minutes from Bulverde and everything in between. Crime has got so transit in the last 20, 25 years, you can't measure it. We're dealing with the same thing that Bulverde's dealing with. Bulverde put out a APB all points. They were looking for a suspect that ripped off the Home Depot. We arrested the guy for being a stolen vehicle. I called Bulverde and said, hey, I just saw your deal online. It's called the Blanco County Jail, because that's where he's at. So we're dealing with those people. When you look at the number of units to respond, so what this chart shows is how many units were dispatched to a call. So this is multiple units responding. That's based on the type of call, right? So we get an alarm call, officer doesn't find an open door, it's a one officer response. We get a call like we had yesterday, at 11 o'clock on Monday afternoon, that an individual in altered mental state believes somebody just came in his house and shot himself. It's all hands on deck. Multiple units, multiple agencies. Next slide, please. In that same period of time, from 2020, as you asked about Johnson City, so from 2020 to 2023, from the same database, the same type of calls, because this is all entered by dispatch, none of this is entered by us. Blanco PD had a 142% increase in cost of service. Blanco County Sheriff's Department had a 38% increase in calls for service. And Johnson City PD, respect them, not talking bad about them, but that's what we want to keep comparing ourselves to, had a 1.2% decrease in calls for service. So the other important thing to point out here is that the officers that we were authorized to up our manning to give us 2 officers per shift, we have not had the pleasure of experiencing yet, right? One of those positions was authorized in January. That officer is in training. We had an officer leave, and I have 1 vacancy. So when we say, well, more officers lead to more stops, lead to more arrests, I'm telling you, the years that this data is taken from is not what 2 officers per shift, because we still, as of today, I only have that on 1 shift. Because people change. This is the workload that's getting done with primarily 1 officer on shift. And when you look at the increase in calls in the same amount of time, because I'm not asking for an investigator, I have 1 investigator. Sheriff's office has a lieutenant and I think 2. Now, I'm not saying we're there yet, but when I look at the growth rate, these are things that are coming. We need to be looking to the future. We have a strategic plan to move forward, not backwards. Next slide. Now, I love some of the rooms, right? So I'm gonna try to address some of those as I keep hearing these things. So originally I heard that the police department had 14 to 16 officers, and that was too many. And I agree. So let's call it 12, and we'll split it right down the middle. We all agree 12 is a good number. Because that's where we're at. That's where we're trying to stay. We don't have 14 to 16 officers. Of the 12, 1 is funded by the ISD, 1 is vacant, and 2 officers are currently in training. And I have an administrative aid. We'll keep hearing about speeding, all right? So we've heard both sides of speeding just tonight. Blanco Police Department in 2021, Blanco Police Department made more traffic stops than Marble Falls Police Department. We're trying to use technology, folks, trying to use technology to help slow people down, right? And last year, y'all approved in the budget something that didn't get approved before, because we just don't add each year. We got to work with things we want. Radar trailer got approved. Ms. Cargo left, but I think she'll agree that it's a good asset. We put it in front of her place. She was very happy. I deployed it last week on Pulsar. Somebody shot it. I drove by and shot my radar trailer. So now, after how much that's going to cost to get that. Recently, I heard that additional staff, police departments making unnecessary stops and hassling people. That's what I heard. That's the way it was working. Well, like I just pointed out, We're not running additional officers, right? I got people in training and I got a database system. Calendar year to date, 55% of the citations written have been for 15 miles per hour or more over the speed limit, and 45% have been for no less than 10 over. So we're writing tickets at 10 over predominantly. Or we're stopping people, so you get warnings for less. This is just an actual citation. So there's an argument too that, well, if you wrote more citations than warnings, well, it doesn't compute, because when you look at citations and warnings total numbers, it doesn't break it out by violator, right? So if I stop somebody for a burned out tail light and speeding, they may get the ticket for the tail light and a warning for speed. My philosophy is, if we write more warnings, it generally means we're stopping people at a slower speed. So are we trying to change driving behavior? Are we trying to make the streets safer? Or are we trying to generate more revenue? Because if I stop you at 8 over and I write you a warning, as opposed to waiting till you go 10 over to write you a citation, in effect, I believe we've educated the public. We've made a traffic stop. The other 20,000 people driving 281 aren't going to call the guy and say you got a warning or a ticket. They just saw a cop had somebody pulled over. And so that's how it's affecting change in the city. Next slide. I've heard that we arrest too many people for minor offenses. I'm gonna tell you, not anymore. Not in the last 3 years. Small amounts of marijuana, and the opposite I've heard, that we don't arrest people needing to be arrested. The truth, the person that I keep getting told about by a few people that we don't do anything about, that individual's been arrested 19 times since 1990. One of those arrests, he went to jail for 8 years. You turn back up in Blineville, we've arrested him twice this year alone. No one is more frustrated when we have to keep dealing with the same people over and over again than us. Believe me. 2021, we arrested 126 individuals for 182 offenses. 79 of those were felony charges. Not minor stuff, right? Felony charge is normally 2 years or more in jail as a punishment. The last one we went to court on, guy got 50 years sentence. So we're not arresting people on silly things. Of the 126 individuals, only 18 of those were residents of Michael. So that means, and again, I don't have the numbers, I get those for you. So even if they were traffic stops, 79 minus 18, that's 61 people who were driving through here in their vehicle with either serious felony warrants or serious felony stuff on them. Felon in possession of a handgun. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that comes out of traffic stuff. Next slide. So I wanted to show this. So in the current year, we have made one arrest on anybody with less than 2 ounces of marijuana. That person we know to be hanging out with who we believe is a drug dealer, and sometimes you have to arrest people to try to get information. But what I wanted to show here is that's 1.4 ounces of marijuana. Those are all individual buds in that bag. 2 ounces of marijuana is not a joint. It's not a blunt. It's a lot of marijuana. That's the only arrest we've made for less than 2 ounces of marijuana this year. We're taking it. We're writing paraphernalia tickets. We're not locking people up on minor infractions that other cities are not arresting people for. And it depends on the court more than the PD on how those things are handled. Right? That's how we're dealing with it. And I'm risking it here because this will be on KSAT and page view, and everybody will 1.9 grams and think they're cool. So we're not out there doing those things. So the Blanco Police Department strives to be much more than the only enforcement tool of the city of Blanco. We believe we're important members of the community who place the values of the city in high regard. We're more than enforcers of the law. We are on the front line of assisting those experiencing mental health issues, medical crisis, removing unwanted wildlife. Snake call this week, not my favorite. Homes, removing downed trees, power lines, distributing water, and checking on our residents in times of need. Unlike many other cities, we are the only representatives of the city after hours and on weekends, assisting and guiding residents and visitors. We work hard to be an integral part of our community, to know our residents and to assist in many ways not associated with policing, but as ambassadors of our community. That's how we try to serve this community. We do not believe we are here to only enforce the laws for the roughly 2,000 people who live here, but to protect the residents of Blanco from the more than 20,000 people who visit or transit our city on a daily basis. What I just gave you is the light at the end of the tunnel that I try to base my budget requests on. And like I've told you, I run a line item budget. I'm more than happy to sit down. And if you think something's bad, let me know what it is, and we'll work to remove that. But an arbitrary number is not the way to do policing. In my opinion. But I don't get to vote for y'all. So, that's it. The next slide, and it goes into my budget, and I've got it here line item by line item for, it's like a used car commercials. Sasha just slashed it here and slashed it. You know, I'm more than happy to go over it line item by line item, do that now, whenever y'all want to do that. But to me, the money in here supports the staffing that I believe is necessary to provide the level of service that the citizens and visitors and people transiting Blanco deserve. More than happy to have to.
Thanks, sir. Well done.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
I think you said it, but I missed it. With our current staffing levels, how many shifts have the two officers?
So tricky question. So let me answer it. So with our current staffing, with our current authorized staffing, every shift will have 2 officers. We have officers in different parts of their career. So I have officers who are still in training, who are riding with another officer in the car. And we have made one conditional job offer for that last vacancy. We have an officer who lives here in town that came from California, lots of years of experience, who is challenging the Texas test. And he wants to come work with Blanco. So, you know, we're trying to recruit local people too. And so if that conditional offer was there, if he passed the state exam, the plan was to bring him on July, August. But depending on the decisions they don't make, I'm not gonna bring them on in August, I'm gonna get rid of them in October. So, again, with our current authorized staffing level, we have 2 officers per shift, me, the lieutenant, and 1 investigator.
And does that include coverage for sick days or vacation?
So again, I'm glad you brought that up. So 2 officers per shift isn't 2 officers here all the time, right? So because sick leave, vacation, and training. So there's still time to only have 1 officer, but when we're only authorized 1 officer per shift, and I'll just give you real examples of that. Friday night, 4:30 Saturday morning, my phone rings. It's an officer who had injured himself the week before, serious burns on the leg, off duty, starting to get infected, has a fever, can't come to work. So it's 4:30 in the morning. One person supposed to be on the shift that day. Now I got guys who worked the night before, supposed to work the next night, and there's 1 other person who's available to cover a shift. At our current level, there's 4 people who can handle their own shift right now. So at 4:30 in the morning, that person turned it to me. So I came out here, covered the shift, and so I get a hold of the 1 other person who was able to cover a shift, bring them in. They wound up also covering Sunday. Sunday turned into a late DWI arrest. They didn't get home until 10:30, and I'd be back to the normal shift at 6 o'clock on Friday morning. There's with 1 officer per shift, there's no room to move anybody around. Because we can't plan on when we're, if it's scheduled training, scheduled sick time, we can do that. Phone call at 4:30 in the morning, it's very difficult. So,
Councilman, so you know, I like to ask questions and dig into things. And Chief and I met for several hours the other day, and I've been asking a lot of questions, and I appreciate it. I can tell you, I'm comfortable that he runs a very tight ship. He's a consummate professional, but that's not in question. It's as well run as you're gonna find.
I understand it's physical service, you know, to your point, I want just to present it as not just numbers, but as the meaning behind each one of those dollars.
All right.
And I think that's what you want.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chief.
Ready to continue our discussion?
Absolutely.
All right, well, I think a zero tax increase is a worthy goal. I don't know that we can reach it this year. I mean, we look at an abstract way to achieve that. And I believe the consensus of council is that's probably not the avenue that like to go in. So, and then the mayor and some others, the mayor has said, there's some places we can go in and improve our spending, control our spending, and having reins on it, referencing our engineer is one, and maybe some others avenues. And I think those are all warranted, but I don't want to approve a budget of, I'm not gonna call it wishful thinking, but something we don't have a hard line out on.
So I've been going through our direct right here while we've been chatting, just making some notes. About 45,000 of it was water treatment plant and lift station that are not gonna be projects. Water treatment plant.
Well, and that comes out of the enterprise fund.
Well, it's broken out into three sections. Their total, last year's budget was 36,500 broken out in three sections. But our actual that is over, the proposed budget this year is 190,000. But that bakes in that we're gonna repeat the water plant, we're gonna repeat the lift station. That doesn't make any sense. If we break it down by actual general purpose engineering, reviewing plans, et cetera, just take out the lift station and the water plant. Will get us down about $45,000 below what we spent last year. So it's not pie in the sky. I mean, it doesn't make sense to take what we spent last year to make next year's budget.
I see black numbers without brackets on it. This is the first time I've seen that. That's with a 5% increase. Happy to see that. It's a possibility.
Can I say something to what the mayor just said? On the Adura, what you're saying, cutting out that we won't use next year, right? And that affects the enterprise fund. That does not affect the general fund. So when you cut those numbers down, which is perfectly fine, because that's going to help the enterprise fund by all means, but it's not going to help really the general fund, is what you were talking about.
Right, but that general fund is a different.
Correct.
And,
I just wanted to separate that.
well, that was what I intended to say, but thank you for going.
Okay, sorry.
So, I mean, if we go with, we're below the CPI, we're increasing less than the price of bread did. And I think a goal, we were at 80% last year. And we reduced that substantially and dropped to 5% this year, with a goal that hopefully we go below the 3.5 or to 0 the following. But I don't know how else you can get to where we need to be without, I mean, we only have two revenue sources. If we can't control sales tax, and it's regulated by how much they spend and what percent of the sales tax we get. So the only other revenue we have for our general fund is a property tax. And if we don't do that 5% and we go over to do a massive remodel of the police department, I could never support that. And I don't know of another vehicle that will make that kind of difference.
And that 5% was 42 cents per $100 of valuation.
42 cents per 100, and which is,
42.2.
okay, which is 10% less than some of the other taxing authorities.
Oh, I know.
We're still below the mean by 10%.
I know. And I was remember last year when we held the line on this because other people wanted to
raise the rate significantly more than we did.
Right. Well, I don't think you can do it all at once. It's not, it's.
And one more thing, and on the ad valorem, this is off the estimate they sent us this year. Again, when we get the actual numbers, it can go up, it can go down. I'm not in control of that. I just get the numbers.
Right, well,
So
we approved this percentage, and that's it.
What's the COVID amount?
we have 257,000 and some change.
And that could be used for things that currently we have on the budget.
Some of them, there's guidelines towards that grant,
But
so.
you could find a way to filter that through.
Well,
So the magic number to not raise taxes is to find $175,000. Period. That's, if we don't want to raise taxes, keep everything the same.
Well, but we have no money in there at this point for the streets.
So what I have a pretty detailed, well-researched proposal that I believe that we can put year one, $210,000 towards the maintenance crew. That's $50,000 for equipment, 120 for payroll, and about 47 for materials, et cetera. We already have 55 in the budget for that. That's broken down and be outsourced. We have the COVID. I believe that realistically, without breaking a sweat, we've already known the attorney by about 30,000 a year. That's distributed among general and enterprise as well, but that's already been done. We can cut just by, without even pie in the sky, just looking at the numbers, we cut about 15,000 on the general fund side out of our. We've not filled the position that's currently not filled with the police, which wouldn't impact anything because it's not theirs. It's
Well, I'm in disagreement on that.
well, we can not fill the administrative position. And make just a few little trims elsewhere, just things like that that are organic and not impacting really anything. And we can fill potholes and balance the budget, not raise taxes, and put about 50,000 towards surplus.
I think that builds a pipe dream.
I can actually justify every number.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? Sure. So you'd like this as a line item on the budget, this, the crew?
Yeah, well, there'd be 3 items. First would be getting set up the equipment, and then there'd be the materials and maintenance.
And would those be employees and?
Yes.
For activity?
Okay, yeah. The fact is, the reason we have not done that, two things. One, we thought, I guess, Infomart was going to do that, and they don't. And two is that, and I've heard people say this, well, we're going to rip all the streets up anyway, why patch them? Well, that rip them all up is a 20 to 30 year project. We need to be in the pothole business. This is the most efficient way to do it. It's really, you're not going to be hard pressed to find a town somewhere of any size that doesn't have somebody out there filling potholes and do the maintenance. The building we're in is falling apart, the trim's wrong. That crew could be able to do that when they're not filling potholes. So that's what makes it. So yeah, it would be a permanent position. And that, I didn't even address the fact that I would believe we can beat up Infomart a little bit and squeeze some of that out. Because they're going to do. I believe we can fill potholes, balance the budget, and not raise taxes without impacting what we're coming to expect from the police or the city.
What restrictions are on the use of the COVID money?
You can pay for officers, it's public safety. We've done all we can with the streets. We can't do any more streets. And it is tourism, but you actually have a population for that, so. So I mean, you put a Band-Aid on it and do officer pay.
You can dissolve it into the budget if you have to.
Correct.
Are we gonna get the COVID money next year?
Oh, and that's.
I don't think so.
So that's still putting 50
Real quick.
for things.
They
I think
are,
we've got what we got.
Yeah.
you're not gonna get any more.
It was like 2 trenches. We got one in 21.
You'll get them.
Yeah, once we spend this, that's.
I'm gonna make a comment though. Part of the reason why you're in this situation we are now is because in the past year, we talked about this last year, we talked about it this year. There have been administrations that never raised taxes. There was, and we looked at it before, in the last 10 years or 3 years, it was 0%. We're at 35 cents to $100 valuation. Most towns are above that. That is part of the reason why we're here. I am very cognizant of people paying taxes, but we should at least go to the voter approved rate, because that has no consequences. That's 3.5%. In order to have a healthy budget, you're going to have to make the tough choices. That's all I'm saying.
Taking more money from taxpayers is not the tough choice. Cutting is the tough choice. I agree with you. People are paying right now. I mean, it's hard, and to layer more on top of it just because we can, it goes again. Rubs me the wrong way. I'm just one voice.
It's not because we can, it is because we have to. If we don't balance, we're going to be insolvent.
Amen.
Okay,
Well, and taking money is one issue, but removing services is another issue.
This actually adds to our services. It removes nothing but people paying us. Period. It doesn't remove anything. There's currently a vacancy, but this has never been filled. I'm saying we don't fill it. That's not taking a step backwards, it's just saying.
That is a step back. Versus the plan that the chief laid out, if we still got people in training and we've had people to lead, it'd still be at the, 12 officers, correct?
Well, and that's the key part. So our authorized 12 is really 11 funded by the city. Right? We pay like $5,000 a year for the SRO. The rest of that money is picked up by the school. Okay, so it's 11.
So it's 11 officers, and right now we've got 10 plus the school.
I'm really hesitant to pull anything from the police department. I've never lived in a community where I've had as much confidence in our force as I do here. They're well-trained, they're professional. They are members of the community. I mean, and it's a diverse force that the chief has put together as well. They are our ambassadors, and I'm very proud to have them representing Blanco. I'm going to be very hesitant to take them in budget.
I have a question, or not really a question, I'm stating, So I kind of heard what you want. You put a weird budget for me out there, okay? That I will agree with. That's just a tie right there, okay? So I'm HR director and the finance director. So when you say cut staff, I'm just gonna be honest, there's a name with that number. Y'all see a number, I see a face. Okay, and like you said, it's getting tough times. Well, they all have a tough time story. If we cut someone, well, then they're gonna have a real tough time to go home until they're significantly under what happened, their position got eliminated. And that brings down the police department and what they're providing for the citizens. And I thought we're here all for the citizens because we're using their money. So to cut even an admin staff, right now we're already short one, even though one is in the enterprise fund, we're short one. So we're running around with our heads cut off. I'm going to tell you that. That's why I say I can't give you a time frame, because we're running around and trying to give excellent customer service. We're not saving lives and protecting people, but if you ask somebody if they need help with the water bill, sometimes it is saving their life because they don't understand it, or they need their bill adjusted because something is wrong. So we're kind of doing the look way, but we're helping the citizens. So to cut any person in, I say all departments is my staff. I know it shouldn't, but I make sure. So any department across the board is my staff. I say to my people. To cut anybody in any department right now, I don't feel that the citizens, we're giving them what they need. I understand that we need to bring down the budget. We do have the COVID, and you keep saying maybe this 1 year thing to get out of the rut. So again, we could spend this. I can tweak this budget to get you to the 3.5. I can't get you to 0, but we could use that COVID money. If you give me a few days, I could put that out there. We could keep all of our staff, PD, non-PD. We'll keep all our staff, even the PD person, I don't know their name, it's just a holding spot, but whatever. Now we got a name, Chris. Okay, so we'll keep everybody across the board. But again, it would only be a 1 year fix because we're not getting COVID funds again. So it's a quick fix to get us to 3.5. Can I do it? Sure. I don't want, but then we're in the same boat as we are going next year, because real quick, I just used 257 and that, we're gonna use it on PD, so we don't lose the PD, and then we can pull in his 2 public or maintenance people. But again, that's a quick fix for this year, and then we're back to square one next year. So if we went to the 3.5, sure, I can pull that out of my hat, I can make that happen. But then we're gonna have the same debate next year. And I'm just letting y'all know, 3.5, that's my goal for the future. I would love to be like other cities and just say, hey, we're doing 3.5 and we're moving on, and that's not what happened. When we came to this city, we're already in a rut. We're trying to get out of the rut. It's a 2-year plan to get us out of the rut, and we're already less percentage-wise if we do 5 than what we said last year at the 8, because we thought we were going to split it 8 and 8. So I don't think losing our staff members, any staff member across the board, is the fix, because you're going to get poor service from the police and from the admin staff. You will not get what they're used to. It will go down. I'm just being honest. It will go down if we lose staff. So my recommendation, and y'all can throw it out because I'm going to vote. I'm just letting you know, my recommendation is to keep the staff we currently have and go with the 5%, so we don't have to sit here and beat this dead horse again next year. And if we want to do the budget a different way next year, I'm for it. Let's bring it on. Let's go. But we got to get through this hurdle. And our goal was, with the last year's staff, is to make it in 2 years. And if we do it at the 5%, that's how we can do it. And then when I can stay face with all the staff here, and we can provide excellent customer service for our citizens with their money.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Well, I am in support of a 5% increase. It's not something that I want to do. It's something I have to do. I have to do it for the citizens of this town, because if we don't, we're not going to be able to make it work. And I think one thing you firmed up that we put it off. We can't keep kicking the can down the road. I mean, it's just not going to work. And we've got a responsibility to get this done and get it done properly. If we're able to implement savings, massive savings, then we can put that toward our reserve, and next year we won't have to do anything. We won't have to vote on an increase. But right now, I mean, that's if we do this and if we do that, all those other things. But I'm just practical that if you're not solvent, you won't have a town. And I'd like to see our council 100% behind this with 5% increase.
Okay, just on the staff and back to something. So historically in small police departments, there's always some gap, right? Someone leaves, it takes time to replace them. So, this year, for example, one position was authorized in January, one position was authorized in April. Positions, an offer has been made, but the earliest that person would start is end of July, August. So that's April, May, June, July. Theoretically 4 months of savings, right? But that happens all the time. The problem is when we don't budget for that position and we don't have that gap, then we're caught. But as far as cost savings, Sasha would have to run the numbers. But I'm pretty sure that when you look at my salary or my personnel line item, which is, we all know, is 80% of my budget. I mean, the city has about 17 employees and 13 of them, which means so that's 2 doctor percentages. But I mean, you can run the numbers. I mean, how far under budget are we going to come on personnel this year? But again, I don't want to give you false numbers. I want to budget. I got a budget for full staff all year, every year. The reality is most police departments are not. So that goes to build up that money, right? Because that doesn't roll back to the police department budget. That rolls over to your reserves.
And Warren, from an administration standpoint, we're going to take on some of these big infrastructure needs at some point. we need our reserves to be properly bonded, is that correct?
So I think what the council member is asking is, basically, we need a balanced budget, and we need to start having reserves, so that when we go up for certificates of obligation, those percentages are lower than what we got last time, it was 4.25. If we actually go out for those items, and we have a balanced budget, and we're starting to go into putting money in the reserves, we'll actually get a bond rating that will help us get this money for less money, cheaper money, is what you're asking. But yes, we actually have to start creating a better budget and a better balance in order to borrow money at less rate.
And how do our assets, like real estate come into play with that?
So they just talk to our financial advisor, and I think what we'll do is we'll plan to schedule the next couple of months to talk to you. One-time sale of property is fine if you're trying to pay something off, and that's fine. That's not going to help you with the bond rating. So, for example, we do have a piece of property not being in use anymore because changing priorities. If we sell that, let's say for $300,000, that's a one-time cash infusion, but that doesn't help you with this. It just helps you with your reserve. You know, helps your reserve. It helps you do something that you know is on it. Do a special project, but it doesn't help you with bond rating or with your overall financial health.
Those assets like real estate don't help us in those situations.
It helps.
Does it make us look healthier to have those assets?
Well, I don't know the answer to that.
I'm just asking the question, I'm just curious.
That would be a question for financial.
Okay.
I would assume that if you liquidate and move that money over into your depository and let it apply, build up as a reserve, yes, that should.
I wouldn't want to spend the other thing. If you liquidate, then you spend it, and it's gone.
Yes,
We either have to stay as an asset, or you have to just.
I'm not suggesting we do
Put
that.
it somewhere, so that. Okay, yeah, that.
All right, I want to ask that we open a discussion of the feasibility of allocating $70,000 of our COVID money to the police department, and in turn increasing our street repair by $70,000 and a 5% adjustment on taxation.
Glad we don't have to vote today on it.
We can vote on this.
I don't think so.
We have a whole another budget meeting to go through. Work to do.
Does
Sure.
this budget already include the 70 days?
I'm admin changing it so y'all can see it.
Okay, that's not what I got.
Yeah, no, I'm just changing it so we can see what the numbers are. I already have the amount in there for the police officer, Chris, and whoever.
Right, that works.
I had that already in it. I just added plus the 70 on the COVID, what I'm doing right now. And then down here at the bottom where we have the 40,000 for the maintenance, I'm gonna increase that to 70. So that way,
Increase it by 7.
oh, plus, okay, yes. Where is
By
my?
7.
Okay, so you're just kind of moving things around.
I'm sorry.
Like you're just
Oh,
kind
there
of
it is.
moving things around, right? That would leave us with the same.
See if you're just on, that might help because I'm trying.
Where you're proposing just kind of moving numbers around.
I am shifting some numbers around. I am not cutting the police department. I am not changing the budget besides adding more money to streets, which can go toward, you know, what the mayor is possibly discussing. And then at the same time, optimistically, we may recognize maybe another. Tim's adjustment's already in there, correct? No,
I don't see anything there.
okay, so maybe we're looking at another $100,000 coming in. And that could go and be applied out of reserve and if we can stay in budget for the year.
Okay, so you're taking 70K from COVID money, giving it to the police, and then taking that police money, giving it to street.
That's correct.
Okay, so the only thing I'm thinking of is next year, we're not gonna have the COVID.
Well, we have $250,000 and we're using 70 of
So we could do the same again next
it.
year.
Is that correct? We can do the same thing next
Yes,
year.
but there is an expiration date. September of next year, we have to use all the COVID or we have to give it back. So that is our expiration date to use.
Well,
Just throwing it out there. So I made the change because I added the additional 70,000 for maintenance and then I added it down there. On the bottom line, it comes out to the same because I'm adding the 70 to COVID and then now we're at 110 for the maintenance. Potholes or whatever needs to be done, it's that.
What's not added, you're probably gonna save with the negotiated rate with the attorney, you're gonna save about $20,000. Would be more if we do further negotiation, but let's just say 20, I don't wanna overestimate that. But that would be over general fund and.
Oh, that would be,
Yeah,
so 10 here and 10 across, okay, so I
go
was.
for- in our July the 11th meeting, we need to complete and finish not only the general fund, but the enterprise fund.
Yes,
Yes.
unless you want to have another budget meeting. I don't know if you do, but yes, if for a budget meeting, we have the complete budget finished.
And to have a budget meeting, you've got to give 2 days notice, public notice.
72 hours notice.
But we didn't make it on the 11th, and our deadline's on the 14th. That's a little bit closer than I'm going to cut it without putting something to bed today.
State, right now, I'm not ready to go to the market, but
So we have
in general,
time
I understand the point of view. I can promise that by the next meeting, I will be ready to close both.
And we haven't started on the general. I mean, on the, enterprise. Maybe we need another meeting.
We might need another, but I promise you, I don't like the idea of voting on.
What if we just have,
Next Tuesday is the 4th, but maybe Wednesday.
And if y'all wanna look at the numbers with the attorney going down 20 across the board, what I did is I took 10 out of the general fund for legal fees. And then I put the other 10, which is split between water and sewer, which is in the enterprise, so I put 5 and 5. So if I did it like that just now, I'm just showing y'all, it would be 46 with the attorney fees coming out, just in the general fund. I made the changes to enterprise, but I'm just trying to keep y'all up to par with what y'all are saying, so you can actually visually see a number.
There's a lot of can of worms that have been opened. We're supposed to be talking about the enterprise fund. Want to shift to enterprise fund and leave some of these questions hanging to do more research?
you know, I want to see if we can't close out. I'm sorry, Ryan, but I want to see if we can't close out the general fund today. Make it realistic that we can conclude everything.
Ryan's not ready to, I'm not ready to do
Well, I'm sorry, you're not ready to do it. I'm respectful that Ron's not, but we've still got a forum. And I would like to make a motion that we approve the general fund budget with a 5% increase, the $70,000 adjustments. And we'll be optimistic about the other adjustments that go to our reserve the following year. That's my motion.
A point of order. Certainly, council member, you can want to do that and we get consensus here, but you're not actually approving the budget or the tax rate until the date of, I'm going to pull that up.
July 11th?
July 11th.
Yeah, July 11th.
Yeah.
And because we don't have it post it that way. I'm not trying to put it on the salary.
Well, let's.
We have the budget as no action.
No, I guess it's no, can we poll? Can we do that? Okay, well, I'll just ask the poll council and see how many are supportive of what we're considering. And if that doesn't fit, then we might need to meet between now and the 11th. Okay? So, Harry, you want to call for a poll?
I would like one thing, I would like to work with you, go through that Ardura invoice, see what is not simply applicable for next year. I think just that alone is gonna be some significant savings. I think budgeting based on all those numbers is
I think
simply.
definitely adjust this, which would just increase if we're going to 5%.
So basically, you're calling about the tax increase.
Well, if up to this amount, I'll say, you know, if you figure out, if y'all come up with some other things between now and the next meeting, and it drops to 3.5 and it still fits, then I'm.
So the poll is, are you in favor of increasing taxes?
Right, it is the 5,
Okay,
if needed.
okay. So council members, so you in favor of increasing taxes?
I'm in favor of the budget as presented with Councilmember Smith's changes with the 730,
Okay, so you're in favor of raising.
with the 5%.
Councilmember,
I'm in favor of having a solvent, balanced budget, so I'm in favor of a 5% increase. Absolutely 1%, but we'll see.
and you're
So that
obviously.
was my idea. So,
Councilmember Moses, in favor of raising.
Right now, I'm standing on a no.
Let's go to the enterprise fund.
So pretty much we're looking at this column here. I know OJ is going to present on the 7th or the 11th.
July 11th.
July 11th, he's gonna, do the rate increase study and give y'all all the information and all that, so y'all can make that decision. But I did it off of two numbers. I did it off of 35% rate increase and the 20% rate increase. And as you can see, if it was 20% right now, we would still be in the hole at 52,000. If we did it at 35, but you can choose any number in between there. I'll just give it two examples. You would be in the black at 232. So that's just, if we didn't go with the rate increase at all, we just kept what we have here. As you can see, it'd be the top one. It's really bad. It's 432,000 in the hole.
Are these based on the rate increases? I know that the CMAX put together a rate schedule. Is that a factor here?
So let's discuss the process. The Public Utility Commission about a year ago hired on our behalf and paid for a rate study. So Phil Gibbons with Superior Management made a rate study. And then from there, we got presented to council about 6 or 7 months ago. After that, OJ and his group at CMAC have looked at doing basically using that study, but then also putting an availability rate in. He'll do the presentation next week or a couple weeks from now, but I think you're still going to see a little percentage less than that 20%. So you are still going to need to look at this with eagle eyes and really try to clamp down on some of these costs. But I don't think his presentation is going to show 20. I was looking at some information today. It's probably about 16 or 17. But so I still think your goal here is to cut this down as much as you can, so that when that's presented to you on July 11th, we can fit it under the cap. I mean, that's if you want to start looking at these line items and questioning expenses, I think that would be appropriate.
So right off the bat, I noticed you already put 10,000 at least deducted from legal.
Right between water and sewer. Yeah.
And this is where the bulk of the water treatment plant and lift station from last year's Ardura invoice is carried over and it shouldn't be. So I think,
Oh, on the professional fees for doing.
yeah, so that can be cut. I
Definitely
don't know
on
the
both.
exact amount, but my guess is about $30,000 is what I'm finding from water treatment plant That's just not, and it's.
I should highlight
That would make
that.
sense because the water plant is like 95% complete.
And we're gonna get a lot of that back. we think.
I'll highlight the two that I can.
Okay, so those two right there, that's
Highlighted.
conservatively 30 to 35,000. We can cut the costs to put there. Well, actually, more than 20.
Yeah, because one of them says 80 and one says 60, so
Yeah.
I'm highlighting and I
Okay,
can go
so
and, adjust
What,
them.
if you just thumbnail, what does that do to the ratings?
Oh, okay, so just, you can take it off one, it doesn't matter which
Yeah,
one?
yeah.
And how much did you say?
Take 30,000. That's what thumbnail on sewage treatment.
Okay, I just took it off. So
And
that
then
would,
the attorney as well. Did you do that?
I already took the attorney
Okay,
off
excellent.
for that 20, we said that's split it between general fund and, yes.
Excellent. What does that do? That affects our.
So it brings it down, it was 52 at the 20%, it brings it down to negative 22,000.
Okay.
So,
That's
I mean,
right there.
yeah, so I'm sure we could definitely get. Make that.
Warren, we talked about, well, we don't, I guess we know the answer, but if Infomart not doing the fiddly maintenance stuff that we've asked them to do, that there's savings to be realized on that as well, potentially.
Yeah, I think there would be, I'll let everybody here know, the mayor and I are gonna meet with, management from market, from Infomart tomorrow. We're gonna discuss some of those items. So hopefully we'll look at some cost savings talking to Infomart tomorrow. The mayor and I do, and then we'll have those budget numbers kind of tightened up on July 11th. So I'm hoping we can see some, yeah, I think it's a good thing to discuss with them, ways to keep the maintenance cap down, keep some of the other costs.
Thank you. If the plant comes online ever and we start taking water out of the river, will that lower the amount we have to pay to San Jose? If we stop using the water, so, yeah.
The answer is it's,
Yes.
yeah, it's $2.13 less, I think it's 1,000 gallons,
So
so
that's significant.
it's significant.
So this is based on 100% King Lake water.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, and we anticipate that sometime this year that light will come online.
You're probably looking at, truthfully, probably end of the year, based on some other issues, probably end of the year.
About 6 months into this, about half the building.
About half the billing season should have bottled water, or at least blended water.
As soon as we get rain, yeah. Yeah. So that number is high.
Even at the levels that we have in the river right now, it's still using some issues. You take some water out, there's no rain, there's no placement.
Yeah, but at this point, the recourse on repairs.
We're probably talking that you need that by the end of the year.
And whatever we've lost and spent over what we should, we may hold that. annually.
Yes.
But those additional costs are not in here.
Correct.
Yeah, well,
Right.
that's gonna be a wash.
Well, then we're gonna get a lot of this reimbursed from, according to from the design. For that whole-
Yeah, the design flaw, yes.
If we spend a lot addressing that bio rights will be.
That is the idea.
So we're supposed to have their 50% drawings 10 days, that's the way we approved it.
But the fact that we're spending more for water because that's offline,
Yeah.
that all factors in, we should be getting.
Yeah, right now we're spending more for water because we're offline, but we're also spending more on engineering because we're dealing with the design flaw as well. And that will all supposedly gone away.
But again, all of that will be reimbursed. to us. So that's a new surplus.
Well, I look forward to, Mr. Armstrong's presentation. I attended the last CMAC meeting and found it eye-opening, but if we do discuss, talk about the percentages, the majority of even if we from what I understand, even if we implemented a 35% increase, then a 5/8 meter with a 3,000 gallons a month use would result in 11%.
That's correct. Not to steal his thunder, but
Well, I'm not.
it's going to be harder on the higher end users than it would be on people with 5/8 and.
Due to the demand.
Is he factoring in, or we, the Cielo Springs situation?
I believe so, you'll have to wait for specification.
That's a question mark on the getting it done. Sounds like a question, non-departmental. There's two things that we had, nothing.
On general fund,
No, enterprise fund, non-department. There's two things that show up that weren't there before. I'm just curious, do you have credit card charges and trash off?
okay, well, trash off, last year, I didn't have an estimate, or for the current year, sorry, I said last year. For the current year, I didn't have an amount for that.
Okay.
So we didn't budget a line item, but I did going forward, we are having a trash off next year, I got that confirmed, so I did budget a line item for that. But the PSN service fee, credit card fees, we don't use PSN anymore, we use Fastbill Pay. So that's why we have something currently budgeted, that was when we implemented the software and changed everything, so that went away, so we did have a budget, but this year going forward, we have to deal with PSN.
Okay, but the credit card charges goes from 0 to 20,000.
Yes, because we were with Fastbill Pay, again, there's only certain credit card companies that work with our, current system that we have. So that is, since we have a lot of utility bills, but that could fluctuate because we have a lot of people signing up now for bank draft. I'm trying to push that along to do bank draft and not use the credit card thing.
Do we charge the fee for credit cards if they choose to use the credit card?
I have no control of it, so they get automatically charged. So if somebody goes online and does Fastbill Pay, if it's, I'm just pulling the number out. If it's like $79 is their water bill and they charge like, I don't know, $3 to use the credit card, or if they come in and they want us to swipe the card, yes, it's preset, I can't alter it.
But don't they pay it?
But
The
yes,
city doesn't pay it, right?
Well,
we pay some of it.
Oh,
So I put a large number, I could bring that down, like I said, because I have a lot of people, I tell them, hey, don't waste your money on that, just do auto draft, because I'm the one who implements it and uploads it to the bank, so that's the easiest way to have your water payment coming out and there's no fee.
How is it we spend 24,000 for the trash off? What is the, how's that broken down?
I have to go pull what it is, like I said, I based off this year because previous years, I didn't know there was gonna be a trash off, so I think we had 2 this year,
it was 2 days, but Infomart paid for it. It didn't,
So Infomart paid for it this time before we had to pay for it, and mainly the roll-off dumpsters.
right.
Rented.
It's the cost of how much you collect and how much you have to sell.
Right.
Yeah. We'll have it on now.
Go for the trash off.
The computer software and updates, $38,000. That is built in the fund fee.
Yes, the current year, we had it all kind of put in enterprise, but now I've actually broken out which portion goes to which department. So
Okay.
you'll see it in the PD, well, I mean, more in admin. And of course, you got utilities and court, which all have their little modular that we pay for the yearly dues and things like that. I just put the main one. There's probably a few other ones, but that's the majority of them out, so I put myself a note on you.
What is there? Minimum for San Jose? If we don't use any water out of that, we still pay them.
I don't know, I'll get back to you on that.
All of our 680 feet.
No, I'm just saying we're going up from 150,000 last year, to 240,000 this year. That's just good.
And if you give me the rest of the week, I'll work on those credit card fees if that's okay, so I can see when to let down, but I have to have a contract, so that's mine personally, I'll see what I can do to work it out.
Yeah, no, when I said,
Because they,
I said something go from 0 to 20,000, I just want to know what's behind it.
right, well, we switch companies, so.
Yes, thank you.
So we still get a negative 22,000, correct? But we're still.
Right, I'm highlighting things that you're like, Mark, you're working on, that we're gonna work on, but I don't wanna change the number until we actually have something set.
So we'll get that number in, hopefully in the black when we get back on July.
Oh, for sure, yeah, it'll definitely be in line. I don't know where it'll, so we can do it.
So other than a little bit here and there and, getting on our own water supply,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
it just comes down, we have to try to raise the rates.
That's correct. And more than half of our enterprise funding is locked in with our contract with Infomart, which is why this is not nearly as complicated as general fund, because there's a big portion that's locked into that contract.
Then we take your.
I think we need to screen.
Highlighted it, so.
Turn screws.
I know you. I know, all of us, the citizens.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on enterprise fund?
Look forward to Oak Armstrong's presentation.
That was my sure of a percentage exactly,
Well,
so I can put that in.
Didn't get to the last meeting, but I was the meeting before. Yes, sir. Yeah, no.
And actually, Sasha running some samples for us, billings. We use in August. Is this not ringing a bell with anybody?
Yeah, no, I've been.
Well, I was to my head today,
So-
so apologize.
But,
Before we make a decision, I'd ask for some additional information.
Okay.
what the council member is saying is we're gonna take the numbers that OJ had, run the bill with, I can't think of the name of the company, and
Yeah,
then come up with what that percentage extra is going to be.
okay, I can do
And
that.
so,
Right, and based off meter size. You know,
Yeah, yes.
Those are, we've got more 5/8, and those are gonna be the residential, and I want to see how it's gonna affect the residences. And then I want to see what it's doing in the commercial as well. But it's based on demand usage. And if they've got a larger demand based off their meter size,
Right.
and they have to pay for that infrastructure for that part of the demand.
you're basically running a bill, and then that will help OJ and council.
We certainly need this before the next meeting.
I'll work on it this week.
I've seen some of the process that's gone into the plan put together. It's magnificent piece of work. A lot of wisdom and experience will be part of that.
Yeah.
It's not just willy nilly. I mean,
No, I mean.
Yeah. Exactly. Any other questions? Enterprise fund is like more sense like this year.
So you feel comfortable now with just having 3 budget, meetings, correct? Or do you don't need a 4th, good with the next meeting?
I think enterprise is,
Done the poll and everything.
I think enterprise is solid. There'll be a lot of rework to do between now and the next one, but I think that
Well, I look forward to what y'all come back.
if we don't have to raise taxes, are you okay with that?
Better believe
Okay,
it.
good, it's a goal.
So there's other funds in here, or those things we need to look at as well, Lauren?
Oh, well,
Well,
I mean, I can go through them, but,
Yeah.
INS is your debt that you have, so pretty much I have the revenue up there and then the expenditures. I told them out last year, they were all kind of thrown in, with the 2 funds, so now I'm just kind of separating them so we can do governmental county. So that's why we had the INS pulled out there, and then, court is in general fund, but the court technology and municipal court building security, that's separate. So we can't use that revenue
Yeah.
towards other things, so I've made that its own.
So let's back up for everybody listening. INS is interest in sinking, and it is part of the ad valorem taxes that helps pay for, the debt that's already been established from years before, and what are those numbers? Just wanna run- run through them real
I
quick.
actually have, the debt schedule out here.
Okay.
So out here, this is our, just not fit on here, but y'all have it, I don't know what page it's on for y'all, but. So what about? What are we paying? 23, so if y'all wanna look at your thing, it's on page 23. This is pretty much your INS, interest in sinking, so we have one that's been going on, it's your first one here, it's the Zoe bond, the series 2015. So we're actually up on to 2024, so that's the interest and the principal, which is 252. And then another INS that we have is the next one to it, which is the combination waste treatment plant, which is the series 2017A. And then if you scroll across a little more, there's one that's the series 2020, which is INS. And then we've also added the new one that is happening in 2023, which all these numbers is what makes up your interest in sinking on your, I call it Fund 300, but it's the INS fund. So that is showing for our debt that we owe for the INS, which is, that's your third tab past enterprise. And then, like I said, we got the court technology, which there's only two things in court that you can't use, you know, for other things, which is your court technology fund and your municipal court building security, which we have that revenue there. And then the expenditure lines. And the thing we use it on is Brazos, the subscription for Brazos annual that we use. Yeah, for the ticket writers. So that's what that's used for. And then we got the hotel motel. I pulled that out from the funds. That way we can show here's what the revenue we received from the tax and the interest. We get about 130, and then we use it to pay the Chamber of Commerce for their services to help us, which is 90,000.
I would expect that
And we do that like every quarter. This year, we actually paid them all up front to 90. So when you see your budget to actuals, it's not offsetting. It looks really bad because we pay them all up front, but normally it's a quarterly payment that we pay them to get up to the 90 throughout the year.
as of about a year ago, we did all the research and only about half of the short-term rentals in town were paying prop tax. Now that there's the new licensing, I would imagine that will have to go up. So, I mean, we're everybody in license, we're actually collecting.
Right, yes.
It's not no longer the honor system.
No, we're actually collecting, yes. And we have spreadsheets to show who's paying what, and we keep track of that. And every tab has, you know, the hotel or the place that's making that
But I
payment. So
expect
we-
that number should go up dramatically since it's no longer the honor
I can
system.
check on it.
Yeah, but it's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I can check on it.
It's passed through, but it is, but it's-
Okay. Oh, yeah. I gotta find that one here. Yeah, we have. That's in 55. Yeah, I don't have it. Yeah. And then, and just the other pages that I have in case, the city wants to see, this is where I do ad valorem to come up with our no new revenue rate and to do the percentages. This is a formula. You can actually go on to the comptroller's office. It's a big old worksheet. You can fill it out, but I've made it short and sweet so it can just give you my numbers. I still have to fill it out when it's time when we actually approve the budget and things. So you actually see the full thing filled out. But this is the short version that calculates the numbers for me so I can work on the budget quicker. So that's all this is, a calculation sheet. And like I attached the debt schedule and highlighted the line items of where, you know, I'm pulling the numbers from for our INS. And then we were gonna go on to maybe look at, but I think we scratched that all together, enterprise fund, hey, general fund. We might work towards that goal or actually in the black, maybe in the future for the next few years, but this one's just a scratch, it was just something to cover.
I'd like to thank everybody for being here. It's great because Sasha has this program where she really gets, gets you to see all the information. I really appreciate people asking questions. That's how we get a better budget. So I think every year the budget's getting better, but that's because y'all are involved. The public will have some say and questions and things. I think that's a good thing. And then Sasha, her team, and really just been plugging away. So everything looks really good. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
I want to say I appreciate y'all actually giving me stuff to work with this time. So now I have a goal and what we're headed towards. I mean, across the board, I don't think I'm gonna make everybody happy. It is what it is. We're all different. We all, just like I look at the staff as my people. So we all look at stuff different. I can work with everybody, not a problem. But the thing is y'all gave me something. Now we know a goal of where we're heading and kind of what y'all want. That's what I kind of need is y'all's feedback. And so I appreciate that. I'm gonna go work, crunch my numbers, send it back to y'all and right next to the show. And like I said, it's not gonna make everybody happy. I can't make everybody happy. And I'll keep my staff. So that's the main thing. My goal is to keep the staff so we can work for the citizens and get it accomplished.
You never cease to amaze me.
I try to say.
You did a great job. Sure appreciate it. Anybody else, anything else to add or take away? Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Normally, when local governments go into executive session, and they return to open session, and you did part of this, you said whatever the time, but they indicate whether there's going to be any action taken derived from the executive session. And I don't think I heard that.
Okay, no, there's no action to be taken.
So there was no action taken.
There were no votes taken.
I know you can't take a
Yeah.
vote in the executive session, but you didn't put anything on the agenda resulting from the executive
There
session.
was a discussion with legal counsel and guidance provided to our.
And the polling that, just to help me, is because I'm not particularly bright, that you did with regard to staffing. Does that mean that all of the existing staff will remain intact?
We told about tax increase.
Actually, you polled, and I believe Councilwoman Swenson, I don't have my glasses on, I apologize. And I believe Councilman further enunciated Councilman Smith's motion. So the question,
It wasn't a motion. It was.
the poll, the request to poll.
Poll, and my main objective on the poll was the tax.
But
That's how I worded it when I asked.
The way he has it set up is that is approved.
What do you
This
get?
gap
So I
will be-
want to know that you said that staff will remain intact. Does that mean the entire staff is currently?
That was not stated, that was not been decided, that's still part of the budgeting process.
Okay.
There was no vote, it was just.
You can't vote in executive session. I mean, that's,
No,
even as naive as I am, I'm cognizant of that. But maybe in the future, it would be helpful if you come out of the executive session and state, I think it's statutory.
Duly noted, thank you. Anything else? I'll open the floor to questions. Well, being nothing else to discuss, no more business. Adjourn. Oh, we have a motion.
Need a motion.
I'll motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second. All in favor? That one's unanimous.